Greetings, this is Mr. Nobody with the third part of my series on what happened on January 6th. And now we're getting closer to the part that really matters. So often we hear about rigged election fraud, all of these things. What really was going on? Well, we've already covered in the last section the major plot to try to destroy President Trump with a whole several years and years of a fake Russia interference probe that, really has turned out to be absolutely nothing. Thank you, Mr. Durham, for bringing us the objective facts. So I know whereof I speak here. With a bogus impeachment based on something that, if anything, it's Biden who did that as vice president, in terms of giving them a quid pro quo. Do this for me, or I won't, or I'll see to it you don't get billions of dollars worth of aid. Ukraine. Okay. And finally, leading up to the famous or infamous, however you want to do it, the Hunter Biden laptop. The laptop from hell, as has been written about under that title. Another book worth looking at. Okay. So, and finally concluding with something we've only found out fairly recently, but it's part of what was going on back then. Because we're going to have to kind of slide back and forth between what was known at the time and then some other things that have been learned afterwards. Okay, we learned that whole probe was a fake thing. We kind of suspected it. Durham dug out all the details. We knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was out there and that it was full of very incriminating stuff. It has since been validated, and I think they've had to start grudgingly admitting that not only is the thing authentic, it's incriminating, and not just about Hunter Biden's own dilapidated lifestyle, but also about his connections with his father and mishandling of the money movements and all this kind of stuff. The Bidens are Chinese assets, pure and simple. They just are. So if we had to take on China, we've already lost, because our commander-in-chief is a Chinese asset, pure and simple. So, that said, what do? See if he gets out as quickly as possible. People say, oh goodness, we lose him, we'll have Kamala Harris. I think I'd almost rather have Kamala Harris in there right now. Not that she's any good, but at least maybe she's not a Chinese asset. Maybe. He, we know, is a Chinese asset. She may not be. So, the biggest one so far in, let's just say, election stealing, election manipulating, was already here in advance of it itself. Well, several. It was all of these. It's a combination of all these things. This perpetual lean against Trump by all the major news organizations that most people would have expected to be at least mostly neutral, mostly non-partisan, mostly kind of fair and balanced, maybe with some biases here and there, especially in their editorializing, but maybe that would be it. Oh no, this took editorializing way to limits where it was passed as news. And I find it interesting. Dershowitz brings out the same thing, that New York Times is now saying analysis, and involving that with a bunch of opinion stuff on the page that's supposed to be the news. There's a place in there for editorializing. We understand and accept that, whatever, but to take that editorializing and stick it on the front page as if it were news. Valid point. Thank you, Mr. Dershowitz. I appreciate that. You're right. All right. Wow, thanks, sir. When are you going to come to realize the Democrats today are not what they were when you were young and impressionable? Okay. I like the guy. I just hope he comes to the full realization of what he's slowly learning the hard way. So, getting back to this whole thing, the Hunter Biden laptop is a reality. a reporter for the New York Post. Now I'm kind of wishing I'd actually grabbed a copy of that paper. You know, it's a very difficult paper to find. They were bought up. They had the article out there electronically, but that article soon disappeared. We also find out from, well, you know, the internet, stuff just disappeared. Nobody knew about the Hunter Biden thing. Almost, a few people, but most people didn't know about it. Even if you read the New York Post and had that article, you'd see it. Oh, that's interesting. And there's no follow-up. What happened to that? I don't know. Well, whatever. Back to life as usual. You see? It's like the story just went away. Oof. And what was that all about? Well, that had to do with short-term goal. As I said, and now I'm going to elucidate what I mean here. There's a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, and a long-term goal. Let's look at the intermediate. The intermediate one was to see to it that Trump does not get reelected, that they can drive him out of the White House. They couldn't impeach him, they couldn't push him out, so maybe they could do the next best thing, which would be to get him voted out. Anyway, 2020 is coming along. This disease came along and made it very easy to, throw in a lot of wild cards into the election process itself, which I hope to get to here, and I expect to at least begin discussing in this segment. And that was to try to steal the election. And how do you do that? Well, I think we've seen a lot of it with the news, with the suppression of the Hunter Biden. Like I said, surveys have ranged anywhere from 4% to 16% different between if only the American public by and large had known about that laptop and what's on it and how it pertains not just to Hunter Biden's own private life, which had a lot of seedy information, but also a number of crucial details about Joe Biden's life and some other Biden family members as well. But Joe's the one that matters. He's the one that's supposedly trying to become president. If you can remember who he is anyway. So that's a big throwing of the election. That by itself could have made the difference right there by itself. But they're not willing to trust that to be enough. And that gets to the last part. And that had to do with the actual frauds in the counting process itself. And this is the part, as I said, Trump, stopping Trump was the middle goal. Because Trump isn't supporting their ESG and thing. He is not interested in letting their economic forum in Davos run America. He's going to protect America from all of that. That's the one thing he can do. Even Ron DeSantis, he means well. But what's he going to do when these characters who manipulate his donors pull the plug on him? And they can. And maybe some of the stuff he's been going through might be, in a way, them showing that they can. They can pull his plug. They can't pull Trump's plug. That's what makes Trump so much more of a force to be reckoned with than anybody else. I believe DeSantis makes well. If Trump can do a good enough job of cleaning these villains out, I hope he can stick them in jail or something. Then maybe they won't be in quite the position to push Ron DeSantis around or whoever comes next after Trump, whoever it ends up being. But I'm looking at him as it stands at this moment, a likely prospect, a reasonable heir apparent for 2028. Okay, I think that would be very reasonable, but he needs to come into a situation where, once he's elected, he could probably do pretty well for 4 years. He can also fight this stuff. Now, he may have a big fight on his hands to try to get a re-election, but at least he's going to be able to get through once, after Trump has done his 4 years. So, They want to manipulate. That was the middle. So what's the little goal? The little goal was to make Biden win. They had no interest in Biden personally. I mean, yeah, he's a nice puppet and so forth, as Obama was, as almost anybody really would have been, to a greater or lesser degree. Like I said, that's, I don't believe Ron DeSantis would want to do this, but they won't give him a choice. And he's not independently wealthy like Trump. They can pull his plug if he doesn't, at least meet their demands to some degree. He'll have to. He won't want to. I know that. I know he doesn't mean to. I know he doesn't want to. I know he would hate that with everything he is. But he'd be powerless to stop it. But they're even trying to destroy him because I think America can kind of see he is already kind of a natural heir apparent for next. Whether that thing still look that way come 2028 is something that remains to be seen. But at least for right now, it's the most obvious and natural heir apparent to the Trump legacy as far as being in the White House after Trump serves out a second term. He's getting some of it too. They can do that. They can force these people to do what they want. And Biden, oh my God, you don't even have to force him. You just say, oh, if I can say this, here's your script. Okay, we want to save the earth from MAGA Republicans, and next page. Yeah, that's the easiest puppet they've ever had. But really, they can manipulate everybody. Indeed, probably one of the problems with having Biden out there is they can manipulate him too easily. It becomes too obvious, you say, and America has come to see that. To the point that even most Democrats, they don't want Biden out there because they can see he's just a puppet to these hostile interests. Puppet of the Chinese, puppet of the Davos group, puppet of the World Economic Forum, puppet of the whole ESG agenda, puppet of all the villainous bad guys who want to starve the world and, make the planet unsafe for anybody. So, they only wanted to get Biden in because how do you get Trump to get outvoted? There's no such thing as negative votes. You can only cast votes for somebody. So how do you vote against somebody? There's only one way to do it, and that's to vote for somebody running against them. And that is literally the only use Biden had. That was all. Let him just get elected somehow, by hook or by crook, and definitely a lot of hooks and crooks, and then it won't matter. And see, once they got that done, the Hunter Biden laptop didn't matter. That's why we could talk about it now. That's why it's common knowledge. That's why we can even find out, as we did fairly recently, how those 51 agents, were pressured, cajoled, tricked, whatever, into signing a document that half of them didn't believe in, and the other half didn't care what they were signing. Saying, oh, this is just a piece of Russian disinformation, in our opinion. No, that's not your opinion. That's certainly not a fact. That's just something that somebody wanted you to say. And guess what? Apparently it was the Biden campaign that came to them and did this. Made them do that. I have to ask another question in all of this. I'm sure they approached any number of other intelligence operatives who couldn't be so forced, cajoled, maneuvered, manipulated, pressured, or coerced, or bribed, or what have you, and wouldn't sign such a thing. I wonder how many they approached. I hope somebody looks into that. You might find some people who might have some interesting things to say about that. But since I don't even know who any of the 51 are, let alone who else might reasonably have been approached by this whole effort, unsuccessfully, obviously, or they'd have had more signatures on there. I can only speculate as how many such people would there be, and what they would have seen, and what they could tell us. So we now get to the big part. And we're coming down towards the end, so I'm just going to get started on a few simple things observed fairly early. Now, I've compiled a list, gleaning what there was from the time. And, they keep saying that Trump was just lying. He wasn't lying. I mean, first of all, let us say it was all some huge mistake. The information, there are very strong, powerful, compelling reasons for any ordinary, honest, neutral observer to have believed that this stuff was going on. As such, Trump could look at all these evidences. He saw it too. He had an attorney, his name fell out of my brain, mayor of New York guy, know what I mean. He'll come to me. Anyway, his attorney gathering this stuff and providing it. But the attorney, he didn't make this stuff up. This came from people. This came from poll workers, poll watchers, reporters, post office workers, rest home employees, people who saw things, who were told to do things and either did or did not carry them out. And, if they did, they said, I did this, but I hated it, and I want everyone to know what they made me do, or I refused to do it, and next thing I knew, I was out on my ear. They pushed me off to the side and didn't let me do anything useful again. Or, all these different testimonies. And thousands of people saw stuff, and more than 1,000 of those actually committed themselves to what they saw with affidavits and so forth. So, this, Trump saw these affidavits. He sat down and read them one by one by one. Or at least he had all of, maybe several dozen most important ones summarized by Rudy Giuliani. There's the name. I don't know why I never block about it. Rudy Giuliani. The attorney who had all of these things on file, kept them, even made them available. With some redactions to keep, certain figures private. But other than that, they were there. I'm sure they're all gone now, except for, as I say, some right-wing archivists might have them. Who knows? Unfortunately, I'm not the right-wing archivist, or I'd have them. See, I wasn't in the period between the election itself and January 6th. I hadn't really fully understood the degree to which they would do stuff. And remember how they made the Biden laptop story just disappear? Until it didn't matter. Once you see, it wasn't so much that Biden's in the White House, it's that Trump's out. Once Trump's out of the White House, you say, doesn't matter anymore. So nobody expends any more energy trying to conceal the Hunter Biden laptop story or any aspect of it, or even how those intelligence agencies were made to sign something that neither they nor anybody else really believes anymore. So, but something else was made to disappear. And this is the stuff that pertains to the long-term goal. This is bigger than just trying to destroy Trump. This has to do with trying to make sure that they can make whatever happen they want to have happen, no matter what the American voters do. Well, it isn't total, but it's a bunch. Okay. So what was observed? All right. Item number 1. Poll watchers were kept way too far away or even prevented from seeing anything at all. Let's talk about that a little bit. You're a poll watcher. You've gone through whatever vetting. You're representing a party. You could be a Democrat poll watcher, Republican, Independent Party, other party, whatever. You could be poll watchers, even just in other concerned citizens. You go through whatever nominal vetting process where they say, yeah, this is something we can let into the areas and let them watch the counting taking place. Used to be you could be right there up close, watching it happen, watching the people pick up a ballot, look at it, and say, who's this for? And, despite some ambiguities or whatever, you get a clear consensus around the table. Everyone agrees, yes, this one was for candidate A. We all agree. Increment that counter by 1. And who's now this one for? And they look around, we can all see this one is obviously for candidate B. Put it in that pile, increment that counter. And at the end of the stack, okay, we found this many for candidate A and that many for candidate B. We all sign our names to these numbers, all of us who saw this, who are the actual workers. And the poll watchers are just right over their shoulders, able to watch this whole process closely and to see that it all went down the way it's supposed to. And if it's so, I can't tell who this is for, but put it in another stack, and that will be adjudicated in another place. You can even have somebody watching that stage. That's how poll watching is supposed to be, and always has been in this country for as long as the role of poll watcher existed. You know what they did this time? Now you're 200 feet away. You see a room full of people at desks doing stuff. What are they doing? Who knows? You can't really tell. You're not allowed to bring in binoculars or a telescope, or a telephoto lens with a camera. You can't even bring cameras really, or they won't let you photograph stuff. So anything you do say is really just going to be your word anyway, isn't it? Hence all of those affidavits. I mean, if they could take pictures, they'd use the pictures. But they can't. So all we have is their testimony. One or two people, or even 5 or 10, you could say, well, maybe, people being made up or being paid or something like this. But this was thousands of people, and more than 1,000 of who actually wrote these affidavits. So they saw this, and you could show pictures of. Here we are outside the building, and see they actually put cardboard all over all the windows to this room. So we, who are supposed to be the poll watchers, are supposed to try to know what's going on in there, and we can't even see through all this cardboard they put over the glass of the windows. At least you could get a picture of the cardboard in the windows. You see? So nobody's allowed in. Nobody's allowed to see what's going on in there. Why are they doing this? Already that's dishonest. And I don't think there's any meaningful way to deny that happened. It was a known thing. Well, somebody had actually traced out from 10,000 dead people voted in Michigan. They counted about 10,000. The roundness of the figure suggests it's either an estimate or an approximation. But still, apparently, a lot of people came back from the dead to vote. And it should be obvious who they voted for. I'm going to continue on the next, but I think you begin to get a little taste of what's to come. The third goal had to do with protecting their ability to manipulate the election count to some degree. So we'll talk about that some more. And that goal still remains. That's why you could talk about the Hunter Biden laptop, because that's about Biden. Nobody cares about that. You could talk about how Trump, whole thing was that because, he got ousted. I don't know if that means they've got something planned for 2024. They probably do. I'll talk a little bit about that. That's going to be for part 4.